Welcome to the Zero Breach Zone, the ultimate podcast dedicated to safeguarding K-12 schools from cyber threats and beyond.
I'm Andy.
And I'm Phil, your co-host guiding you through the intersection of cybersecurity and education.
Each episode, Phil and I will dive into conversations that matter, breaking down the latest cybersecurity challenges that schools face.
And we're not doing it alone. We'll be bringing some experts in the field from the EdTech world and beyond for interviews, getting their take on the most pressing issues.
Plus, every episode will wrap up with a recurring segment, The Parting Tool, where we'll share a top tip or tool that you can start using immediately to stay ahead of breaches, phishing, and everything in between.
So, welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you here with us. Let's not just listen, but let's take some action. Connect with us on LinkedIn and other socials and join the conversation. Together, we can build a strong community dedicated to protecting our schools. Welcome back to the Zero Breach podcast. We are happy to be here. I'm Phil Hintz.
I'm Andy Lombardo.
And we are here broadcasting live from the FETC conference. That's the Future of EdTech conference here in Orlando, Florida. We changed locations from some of our other episodes, but that's okay. We are happy to be here, happy to have a good Wi-Fi connection in this area. Yeah, actually, keep your fingers crossed, right? Knock on a bunch of wood and who knows what. With EdTech, you'd think we'd have good Wi-Fi at our EdTech conference, but it seems like every vendor here has its own Wi-Fi network right now. We saw the whole list of them, so as we're trying to connect.
And we're in a concrete bunker.
Yeah, concrete bunker. So the voice you just heard is Michelle Krieger. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, Michelle
Right.
Krieger. Yep.
Michelle Krieger, great. And we're happy to have you here as our guest today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're
My
at.
unlikely story. I'll tell you.
Unlikely.
Yeah,
Okay, let's hear about it.
absolutely. So I was a teacher, special education teacher.
Oh, wow.
And probably 2008 to 2010, our district started to get into putting smart boards in every classroom,
Yes.
et cetera. And I was like, what is this? A special education tool. Like
Yes.
I looked at it, always type of special education tool. I did. So like, how can I get my students to access curriculum? And I'll do it through this and make it fun and exciting and something different. And then, so I kind of like got into tech at that point. I was like pretty much hook, line, sinker. I was like, wow, this stuff is great. And then in 2014, by the way, I was with a small school district, rural district outside of Buffalo, New York.
So when you say
Holland.
how many students?
Probably 800.
All right.
And
It's small.
yeah, it is. I told you. 3 buildings. Yeah, surprised it wasn't a one-room schoolhouse. But the superintendent that we had at the time in about 2014, she was very aggressive, Kathy Fabiatos, very aggressively technology-driven, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And so we went one-to-one. And when we went one-to-one, everybody looked at me and said, okay, what are you going to, you figured out smart boards. You were teaching teachers in faculty meetings all about how to use this and use it appropriately. So when the superintendent came in, said we need iPads, everybody's going to get one. We didn't even do it like most school districts did, one grade level at a time.
Yeah.
It was like we put an IPA together.
Yeah.
We threw all the iPads at teachers and said, here you go. Obviously, you could understand the anxiety around that. So I did. I threw myself into how does this help my special education student. I always, like I said, I always looked at it as the lens of the classroom teacher. Doing that, however,
Were you a classroom teacher during that time?
still,
Okay.
yeah,
Still.
still. I was actually a consultant teacher.
Yeah.
So I pushed into classrooms to help my special education students through Gen Ed. So anyways, she's like, I think we're probably taking too much of your time up in the classroom. So I think I'm going to make a position and see if the Board of Education agrees with this. So basically they said, we're going to make an educational innovator. That's what she called it. And so it wasn't just a tech integrator or anything like that. It was because I knew curriculum very well. She didn't want to like pigeonhole me to curriculum and she didn't want to pigeonhole me to technology. So she created this educational innovator. So basically what it was is a tech integration position. I went into classrooms. I helped teachers figure out not only how to use the iPad, but like good resources I can provide them and what got students moving forward with this stuff. From there, we started realizing, oh my gosh, the more we have this hardware, we need software to be in it. We started going crazy with purchasing software to the point where my we didn't really have a director of technology in the district because it was so small, right? So the superintendent was acting as the director of technology. So she said, I obviously can't handle all this, but then I said, but you know what? Here's an interesting thing. I'm not an administrator.
Yeah.
I'm not a district administrator. I don't have my administration degree. She goes, yeah, that's okay. We're going to put you a teacher on special assignment,
There you go.
and
So-
we're just going to call you a technology coordinator. So I actually moved out of the classroom at that point and moved it to a technology coordinator role, which it provided the opportunity for me to still do the integration, but also work with vendors and things like that. So in 2020, New York State, and its infinite wisdom and unfunded mandates, said you need to identify by January 20th of 2020 who is your data protection officer. They finally realized, Jesus, we have all of this stuff going on with kids, right? And no one is really watching our network.
Yeah.
No one's
Watching the
really
data.
watching the data. Exactly. So basically, when they said that, she said, guess what? You're going to take on a new role. You know how you sit at the admin table, right? And we're having meetings and everybody's, oh, there's a new position. And I realized that I needed my finger on my nose soon enough. That's exactly right. Thank you, Andy. You got where I was going with that completely. So she's, you're going to do it. Obviously, I'm extremely detail oriented. I'm extremely policy driven. I'm a
Well,
rule
there you go.
follower. So it fit in really well. So I got the data protection officer. I was still tech coordinator. And then Lakeshore, where I currently work, they talked it over. I had been leading a group in Western New York called the Western New York DPO Cooperative.
Okay.
And it was just basically, hey, this position's new. And our BOCES was doing a good job getting the information about what to do in a data protection officer position. But because it was like coming from the state, going to BOCES, the people there aren't doing the work, right?
Yeah,
So they're
that's
not
the day in,
physically
day out.
day in, day out, boots on the ground. So I decided to put together a group of DPOs that could talk about the work.
All right.
And so I was leading this group. And at that point, I got a lot of visibility in the region.
Right.
And Lakeshore decided they had some board members who were in the IT industry and understood the importance of data privacy, cybersecurity, all that was coming down the pipeline. And so they agreed with the superintendent and the assistant superintendent that, yeah, let's get a data protection officer in here to assist my director of technology, because that's who primarily has to bear the load of a data protection officer position, is the director of technology. And it truly is so crazy to me that these two positions would be thought as okay to be together.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow for checks and balances within the system. Because basically you're the director of technology saying, these are the policies we're putting in place. And then you're the data protection officer saying, those policies look great.
Yeah.
So I interviewed in February for the position, and in
At
July at Lakeshore, and in July I got the position. So I've been working there since 2023.
2023.
Yeah. So I'm a year and a half in as a sole position as a data protection officer. And I am proud to say, as Louise DeCandia, our chief privacy officer, likes to boast, I was the first in New York State.
First.
Yeah.
State. Wow.
Yeah.
So Lakeshore, it's a school district?
Lakeshore is.
Okay. And what size is that compared to the 800?
It's 3 times. It's about,
2,400?
yeah, it's about 2,000. Let's say 2,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah.
So you're responsible for all the data and the integrations and the data
Correct.
privacy agreements for.
You got it.
Okay.
You got it. Yeah. So I do a ton of training too.
That's what I was just going to ask is if you're responsible for all that data, you want to make sure you've got clean data, and that not only is it clean, but that you're making people aware, when I say people, teachers, aware of how important it is to protect that data.
Yeah.
And so you are doing some
And
training.
it literally is that anyone who has an email address needs to be trained in our district,
Yes.
because they have
It's a good way of looking
access to the network, right? So that includes your bus drivers, your cafe
Yeah.
workers, your buildings and grounds. So yeah, I do training for the district, and I like to try to differentiate my training as much as I possibly can, because what a teacher needs to know about data privacy and cybersecurity is very different from what
Bus
buildings and ground or bus drivers, right? And time is valuable no matter what position you hold. And I try to make sure I make use of everyone's time as efficiently and appropriately as I can. So I don't want somebody who's a bus driver sitting learning about like Power School and how they need to be. Funny that I brought up.
Yeah.
I didn't even mean that.
It's the theme of 2025. I
And
think.
probably this conference. Yeah. No, I didn't even mean to do that. They don't have access to that, so they don't need to know the securities about that, but a teacher would. So training is very different for the different roles within the organization.
So from your lens then, yeah. So you're doing not just data privacy awareness,
Correct.
but also cybersecurity awareness. Are
Correct.
you using any particular tools for that, or?
We use right now ESET is our
Okay.
EDR, so that can keep track of our endpoints and things like that.
Okay.
I'd
But I
love
more for tools. So I don't want you
for training
Yeah, for training. Yeah, I don't
Uh,
want you to give away.
right there.
Oh, that one.
We're
Oh,
looking at it.
that's
Yeah.
right there. Oh, yeah.
For sure.
What intrigues you about that?
So I like the idea that it is continuous.
Okay.
I think one of the things that I try to talk with the other districts that I work with is this is training in cybersecurity with data privacy is not a one-shot deal.
Right.
It's not. It can't be. So the idea that you get continuous hits of training throughout, and they're little, they're not super time consuming.
Yeah.
It just a 7-minute max is probably anybody has
Right.
the time to deal with at this point with this kind of a topic. And
Yeah.
and so I do faculty meetings, I do that, but having something like this tool in the background and being able to hit on a more regular basis and keep cybersecurity and data privacy in the minds of teachers 24/7 or at least 12 hours a day, maybe,
Yep.
is super important. Super important.
Two of the things for me, and you hit on it, the things that I love about CyberNut is recognizing that the teacher time, like we just finished the onboarding campaign in my district recently, and I timed it as maybe 2 minutes max to
Right.
onboard. And so I've never had a product that I could onboard people in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And just really incredible. And then that ongoing continuous use.
Yeah.
Because you really don't want it to become like the bloodborne pathogen trade.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
So,
No, you do not. And honestly, what we came to face this year was there's only so much time that teacher unions will allow
That's
for
true.
training,
Good point.
right? So we worked with our union to talk about implementing different ways that we can get cybersecurity training in and not make it like an additional bloodborne pathogen
right.
video that you have to
Yeah.
watch for 45 minutes and then hope that you pass the quiz at the
Yes.
end so you have to watch it again. So
Yeah, I recently saw a McKinsey study that talked about how it analyzed the amount of time in a teacher's day, and it said that 49% of the time in a teacher's day is spent directly interacting with students, and 51% is all of the training,
the other stuff.
administrative, the bus duty, all the other pieces that make up being a teacher. And so,
that's disheartening. I
It
didn't
is.
know those figures. My goodness. Yeah.
so anytime we can get some of those minutes back, I think is a win.
Yeah. So be
Well, and I love that you have a heart of special education. I have a special place in my heart. I have a son with Down syndrome,
Okay.
and I'm actually doing my PhD on the impact of augmented reality, virtual reality for students with intellectual disabilities in learning life and occupation skills. Have you thought about your cybersecurity awareness training for students
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and or special needs students in particular?
Yeah, most definitely. I do a lot of student outreach
Okay.
and I do community outreach too. So the students, one of my goals when I first started with Lakeshore was to get to every classroom in the elementary building.
Okay.
We started with 3rd grade, and basically I ran a 2-day cyber safety,
Right.
online safety kind of thing, and really focused on, because our librarians do a fantastic job of hitting digital citizenship.
Like
And
common
this
sense.
Common Sense Media, you got it. And Common Sense Media even has some wonderful things for cybersecurity. But I feel like I just kind of wanted to be known in the district, like, hey, here I am. If you ever have any question about your interactions online, or you have any questions about your child's interactions online or anything like that, I'm the person to contact. And so I would go into the libraries, I'd meet with students. We did a 2-day lesson. I'd go into the high school and middle schools in the computer applications classes
Okay.
and talk with them about it. The kids know a lot,
Yeah.
which is startling,
Yeah. That's good.
but also it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thing because they could write books about how to stay safe online too,
Okay.
but they don't always do
Right.
what they preach.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. So it's good conversation to have with students, most definitely.
So have you differentiated that instruction
Yeah.
according to the student?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I've got my elementary
All right.
lesson plan. So Antoinette King wrote a book about digital citizens and cybersecurity.
Okay.
And she has this one chapter that talks about baking a cake.
Okay.
It's cybersecurity is as easy as baking a cake or a pie or whatever. And so the ingredients that go into being smart online
Yeah.
and to being cyber safe and things like that. So basically that's what I do for my elementary kids. I bring in little cooking things
Okay.
like baking soda, but I cover the boxes
All right.
and I write step 1, step
That's-
2, step 3. And then the kids like literally help to create
Yeah.
this mixture of how to stay safe online. And then I pretend I have a magic bag
Okay.
of that's my magic microwave. I stick the concoction in, but in the bag is I shouldn't tell my secrets because if any of those kids are listening online, they know that. But then I have a bag of candy in there. I pull it out and I was like, look what we made. Yeah, yeah. It's to that. As to how I differentiated it for the high school class that I met with, that's computer applications. We talked a lot about like deep fakes,
Okay.
and we talked about audio fakes and
Sure.
things like that. And we talked about, and it was when I went in, it was during the election.
Okay.
And so we
Good.
talked about a lot of things to do with cybersecurity and elections. And I brought in conversations about CISA and, you know, what the FBI does and how like really truly fighting cybercrime is a federal, state,
Yeah.
down to your local agency.
Yes.
It's a problem for all of us. So
How was the response for
Like-
those students?
I think it was great.
Yeah.
The teacher that I was partnering with to do it was absolutely thrilled with the amount of conversation that was happening
Okay.
throughout the class. And plus also in a computer application class, you're going to have kids who want to go
Yeah.
into that field.
Right. Right.
So it's good to have.
So they're right there.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
It was a good
engaged.
conversation. Yeah.
Did they bring up anything? Did the students bring up anything of concern that you were surprised about in terms of cybersecurity, or was there any weird questions that?
They wanted to know like what is in place for the school district. Like they were very interested
Okay.
to say like, how do you protect our stuff?
Yeah.
What do you do in your
Okay.
daily job? So it was
Yeah.
great. It was a great conversation. We actually got into a lot of like my background and how I got from where I was to where I am, which is pretty unconventional. I don't know that a lot of people
True.
would follow my path, but yeah, it was great that they were so interested in the career path of that and
Okay.
things like that. And just wanting to know, what does their school district do?
I already heard of deep fakes and
Yes, we
that they had any experience with deep fakes.
Not yet, thank goodness. No, we've had situations within our region. I won't just say my district, but within the region where you get the voice
Yes.
calling in that there's a bomb threat or
threat.
things like that. So that was their familiarity with
Okay.
it right off the bat. But it was fun to show them a couple different websites with
Yeah.
like deep fakes, like which picture is real.
Yeah, good. good.
In my session on Friday, I actually am going to work people through a little bit of that too, and some trusted sites that you can go to check on.
Check out now.
Uh,
Like a fact
A
checker.
fact checker.
Even
Yep.
though
Yeah.
I believe a famous social media platform has said we're going to get rid of our fact checker.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
About it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, they slow things down. There's a reason they slow things down.
That's right. That's right. Fake news.
Nice.
Thanks.
One of the things that you mentioned that I'm really excited about, I think that a lot of people should really take it about more often, is the way you explicitly are doing this kind of education.
Yeah.
And not just, we have the joke of usually it's embedded in the curriculum. And when you say something is embedded in the curriculum, that's code for, yeah,
We might.
someone does
might-
something.
And it's on
It's on me, but I'm sure someone else does it.
Yeah.
So taking that explicit time to make sure you're having these conversations with students.
Yeah.
And I'll echo what you said about their concern about how we protect their data. Because I recently had a group of high school seniors kind of doing a vocational day where they're asking about jobs. And so they were coming to our department to ask, well, what are IT jobs like? Do you go to college? Do you do certifications? Like, what's the pathway?
Mhm.
And we opened it for questions. That was what they were most concerned with, because we talked about one of our jobs is protecting their data.
Yeah.
And they were very concerned about, that they having grown up in an environment where everything is reported, everything's on social media.
Yeah.
I was surprised that they had those concerns.
Yeah. I just thought of something. There is a story I tell about a friend who was in a hiring position. And one of the things that the company that she worked for did was checked your social media presence. And
LinkedIn.
she said, I can't tell you how many people just don't recognize the significance of a post.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
it's
that
just something to think about.
they oftentimes think that there's a separation. My social life is over
Yes.
here. My professional life's over here.
Not
Not anymore.
Yeah.
One and the same almost. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have a former student who, at around 2008 or so, and she had tweeted something in high school, and 15 years later, it surfaced, and she lost her job. It was a high-profile job.
Wait a minute. You mean when you delete, it doesn't leave
Yeah.
the. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
That's
So,
exactly right.
They
News
don't know
for our
that.
listeners, if you delete something, have it really
They don't have that concept.
Yeah, so the shelf life of that is just,
I think it's good for teachers to know that too.
it goes along with some other things we've struggled with, data retention. So I know that's a struggle that we have with things like the PowerSchool breach and
Yeah.
the fact that we are housing this data for such a long period of time. In your position, you deal anything with like data retention and how long you hold on to records, or maybe what records you collect?
Definitely. We work with the business official who is into the data retention and records retention. Yeah, I work with him, but bringing on new vendors, it's super important to look at where what they collect, where they store it, etc. So I'm explicitly
Yeah.
the person that takes care of that in the district. But it's what we've done in our district is created, because I feel like everybody needs to be aware that if there is software that's coming to our district, that it has to be vetted. And I think prior to me getting there, that wasn't necessarily the case. And IT sometimes was out of the loop, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
IT is out of the loop if the bus garage is going to get a new
Yes.
transportation system. Like they were sometimes out of the loop until it didn't work. And then all of a sudden you're getting a ticket and you're like,
Yep.
wait, what? That's disturbing, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't work that way in our district anymore
Good.
because basically what I do is with all of the department heads, we talk about if anything comes new to the district, it needs to be vetted by us first, not just to make sure that it works with our systems, but to make sure that it's law
Right.
compliant
Yep.
and that they have good privacy laws or policies around their product. One of the things we were talking about in the region is we have these products, and if they're constantly being patched and they're constantly having updates, and
You begin to wonder.
I say to my team, let's have a conversation about this product that you're spending a lot of time
Yeah.
patching and things like that. I think CISA Secure by Design
Yes.
is leading
Yes.
the effort to
Yes.
try to say the onus of security really truly needs to be on the product maker,
Yes.
not the end user.
Glad to hear that from the end user's point, because we talked about it in a previous episode. In fact, the one that dropped this past week
Yeah.
about that secure by design. And one of the reasons we were talking about it is the fact that our school, I shouldn't even just say Power School.
Scholastic.
None of the major SIS companies have signed currently
Yeah.
the Secure by Design pledge.
Right.
And we're hoping that we can encourage them now
Sure.
to put the practices in place
Yep.
to then rightfully be able to sign off saying we are secure by design. But surprisingly enough, when we looked at that list, it was like, there's no SISs here. Not only is Power School not here, but none of the other ones are either.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So we developed, like I said, it's everybody's job to keep everyone safe, right? So
Yeah.
basically, not just the department heads, but even the teachers come to conferences like this,
yes.
especially like this,
Yes.
and they love new tools or new
Yeah.
things that they can bring to the classroom. That's all well and fine if it filters through the right channels
Yes.
before it gets to the students, right? So we created a software inventory within our district that any teacher can go to, look it up. Do we have it? Do we not have it? If we don't have it, there's a form to fill out. Hey, we want this.
Yeah.
And then that's where I spring into action and talk with the
Good.
vendor about looking at their privacy policies, working on
Sure.
DPAs of making
Good.
sure all that's in line before we jump.
Are you part of the SDPC?
Yes, we
Good.
are.
That's
New York
so
State.
we,
Yes,
right.
I'm very happy to announce
Yeah.
that we are.
Yeah, they're
That
working
just
on
makes your job
version 2.0
Yeah.
and all that?
already.
Yes.
I barely got into 1.0 and I am hearing about 2.0 already, so that's okay.
Yeah, with AI, we have to move. We're going to have more language of AI in your data privacy agreements as well.
Yeah.
So that's nice. It can only help us.
Yeah.
And even in the case of the Power School breach, we had data privacy agreement with them.
Yes.
The district had data privacy agreement
Sure they
with
did.
them,
Yeah.
but they still got breached. And that made me realize that anybody we have a data privacy agreement with, they're going to do whatever it takes to
Yeah.
keep your data private, but that doesn't mean that they're not
Yeah.
impenetrable.
Yes.
And at least hopefully if they're following their agreements, at least it's giving you a little bit of guardrail
Yes.
for, especially with retention. Like that's one of the things that keeps me up is thinking about, we've got data from 2010.
Yeah.
I've got some machines with data going back 97, 98.
Yeah.
And do we need to be housing that? Because it's just a target.
Were you around for Ames Web too?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
We weren't even, I'm sure this is happening with Power School too. I am a Power School district, so we use it. But with Ames Web at the time, the district wasn't even using Ames Web anymore. And it had been like 3-4
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And in their privacy policy, it did state that they would not retain the records.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah.
And we essentially were one of the districts that was considered in the breach, even though we weren't using the product and had to mail out all the notifications
Yeah.
and all that. That's an expense to a district. And
It
it's not only is it costing them for that kind of stuff, but also they have to do the
Trust.
credit monitoring and then
Yeah.
their trust
Yeah.
factors.
Yes.
Credit amount.
Not
But then, you can't really put a cost on
on the trust.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
credential.
Absolutely.
I was thinking about how fast that's all evolved too, because I can think back when I was in the classroom before we went one-to-one and before we started adopting all the digital tools, we had maybe less than 10 software pieces that we used in the district. It was so low, and they were mostly self-hosted. We had the data on premises, and then it was just 2 or 3 years later, and we've got 100 different SaaS services we're sending data to. And with one of the early single sign-on companies, the free one, I would go back and
Free is never free.
right.
That's right. That's right. They're selling something.
Kind of my awakening to this data privacy was I went and looked at what data we were sending to different vendors. And my favorite example is like we had a program for like pre-K reading kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And we're sending like step parent name, step parent phone
Right.
number, dad's name, like
Yeah,
every one of the
self-contact.
family. Like we were sent, they were by
Dog's name, probably.
requesting and sending everything. And so that really opened my eyes to the fact that you need to see what they want, what they need,
Yes.
and what you're sending to them. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
that was something my eyes weren't open to that when I first stepped into my role.
You bring up a good point. Yeah. And I actually had one of our data integrators for our school district. I said, well, yeah, they're requesting they need all these fields. He said, what do they need? I was so happy that he asked me that question because it opened my eyes at that point. I was like, let me find out exactly what they only need an email address. Why are we sending them the birth dates? Why are we
Yep.
sending home addresses? Oh, yeah, just
Sorry, on a
Okay,
similar, just a conversational topic.
Yeah.
With ClassLink.
Yeah.
You have experience with what's their tool called that does
Data Guard.
Data Guard.
Okay.
Yes.
That's new.
Yes,
Yeah.
we are a ClassLink customer. Yeah, and
Yeah,
and,
that's too.
Data Guard, for those of our listeners who don't know what that is, they actually they ingest the credential data into ClassLink because of the single sign-on aspect, but then they encrypt it before they pass it on to whatever software vendor that you're trying to log into. And so it's encrypted going in and it's encrypted coming out.
Yep.
And so even if a hacker were to get that information, it would be gibberish,
Yeah.
basically, to a hacker. I'm so thankful that they are thinking that way. And
Yeah.
I would hope more companies would not only partner with ClassLink, but would
Right.
have those kind of practices in place.
And I was wondering if is ClassLink secure by design?
It is.
Yeah,
They,
I
they're-
thought so.
they were
I
one of the
remember
first
seeing
ones.
They
Yeah.
were. Yeah.
They're one
That's
of the
great.
first ones. Yes, absolutely. And they're talking about our previous episode, our listeners will know, but they've added some other features that are coming up. In fact, some threat detection things.
Yep.
Which I know you started to allude to.
Yep.
They're building that in for free, no additional cost.
Right.
If you are a ClassLink customer. So
Right.
they've really
Stepped
of
up
course,
their game. With
not only stepped their game, but with the cybersecurity rubric as
Yeah.
well, helping us.
You can get accredited.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can as
As I can.
as a
Yes.
practitioner.
Yeah.
So can I. But more importantly is it allows districts to look to have that conversation together to make it not just your job for cybersecurity and data privacy,
Correct.
but the whole district's job.
And
to-
certainly
to
the
have their
IT team.
parts.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And to know where the holes and the gaps are so that you can then start improving upon that.
Yeah.
That's what the cybersecurity rubric really is.
Yeah.
NIST standards and CISA, they partnered. So really, sounds like a selling point for ClassLink, but
Right.
they've really done a
Right.
really good job, and
Yeah.
we highly recommend them because
Yeah.
they got their heart and their
Yeah.
heads in the right
Ditto.
places.
Absolutely. Yeah. We would recommend
Yeah.
to for sure.
Yeah, and on the DataGuard product, you talk about some of the free things they're building in now. But DataGuard, I put off pursuing it for a while just as I assumed it would be expensive.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's really a small,
Yeah.
very small add-on.
Yeah.
So it's keeping you from it. That's a good thing. We're just getting ready to roll that out.
And then look at the idea. If you don't take that little small step on that way, and then something were to happen, what does that cost?
right.
And all of a sudden, now data card is essentially free compared
Yeah.
to what the cost that you're having to do to mitigate.
Yeah.
Yeah, even just a handful of mailings it would meet that cost.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
very glad that they made that affordable,
Sure.
approachable.
We always, the Zero Breach Zone here, we like to have a parting tool or tip, possibly. Do you have a tip?
Yeah, I absolutely
One of
do.
those for us?
I hear
You could share with our
I
listeners.
got a lot of tips.
Great.
But I would say if you are a director of technology or whatever your district chooses to call you,
Yeah.
I would strongly encourage showing the difference between what the position of a data protection officer is and what the position of a director of technology is. And showing your superintendent, showing assistant superintendents, maybe even board of education, the difference between those roles. It's so important to know that basically what you're doing as you bring on this idea of data protection officer in your district is, and placing it on the director of technology, is giving them two jobs. And it's just not the way to go. They're very different. And I'm very focused on risk management. I'm very focused on training. I'm very focused on policy and things like that. And not to say that your director of technology isn't, but it's not their focus.
Right.
Implementing software is their focus. Making sure that Chromebooks work on a daily basis is their focus. And they're very different jobs. I just would encourage, if you're a DTO, to really have conversations about whether or not you have somebody on staff that takes care of cyber incidents and things like that. That's if Guy Kawasaki is
Yeah.
the evangelist
Yes.
for Apple, I would say as
Yeah.
I'm the evangelist for DPOs and having it be a separated out.
DPOs, yeah.
Yep, DPO is a
As opposed
separate
to
institution.
CTO. Yeah, separate from the CTO.
Yes, a privacy officer. Yeah.
That's for
For sure. Have those conversations
Yeah.
and make sure you have the seat at the table. You
Yeah.
gotta have the seat at the table to be able to have those conversations.
conversations.
So,
Absolutely. That's
yeah,
awesome.
for sure.
Thank you. I know you're busy. You're
Um,
you're here to
I'm out to the
learn.
next session.
You're here to present. I know you've been presenting and you're learning. So we thank you for your time today and spending time with us here at the Zero Breach Zone. As always, we strive to have guests that help us and teach us to learn how to make our districts more effective in becoming a zero breach zone.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Zero Breach Zone podcast. We hope our conversation left you feeling more informed and empowered to protect our K-12 schools from cyber threats.
A big shout out to our sponsor, CyberNut AI, for making this podcast possible. CyberNut is committed to providing security awareness training designed for schools, helping educators and students navigate the digital world with confidence.
If you want to learn more about how CyberNut can help strengthen your school's cybersecurity defenses, head over to their website, cybernut.com, and sign up for their training program. Together, we can create a safer online environment for everyone in our educational communities.
And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Connect with us on LinkedIn to join the conversation and help us build a strong community around cybersecurity and education.
Join us next time on the Zero Breach Zone for more insightful conversations. Stay vigilant, stay ahead, and let's keep our schools a
Zero
breach
Zone.